seen the headlines. China removes billions of tons of sand. A desert vanishes in 1 year. The images they conjure are impossible.
China just shocked the world again, and this time it happened in the middle of the toughest desert on Earth. After only 1 year of work, Chinese scientists managed to remove billions of tons of sand from areas that were once completely lost. This is the Taklamakan, a desert so harsh that people once believed nothing could ever survive there. How did China pull this off in the middle of a desert, and what does this mean for the future of our planet? Join us as we break down the explosive secret behind it all. China's desert problem. This is the Taklamakan Desert, the great sand patch that stretches across northwest China. When people hear Taklamakan, they might think of a typical desert, but this place is on another level. It covers about 337,000 square kilometers, which is actually bigger than Germany, Poland, and Japan combined. According to scientists, the only shifting sand desert larger than this is the Rub al-Khali, way over in Saudi Arabia. From a distance, it looks calm, almost peaceful, a golden sea of sand stretching endlessly. But once you step inside, you realize nothing here supports life for long. The sand moves, shifts, and reshapes itself with every wind, leaving no steady ground, no soil to plant even the hardiest of seeds. But that is just half the story. Stay with us, because we're going to expose all the incredible details of how this massive, terrifyingly beautiful desert actually came to be. The Taklamakan did not appear overnight. Millions of years ago, the Tian Shan Mountains to the north and the Kunlun Mountains to the south blocked water from reaching the basin. The Indian Ocean tried to send clouds and rain. Siberia tried to push cold air with some humidity, but the mountains refused to let anything in. Over time, this created a natural no-rain zone, and the land in between became an ultra-dry wasteland. Water that could have supported rivers, grass, and forests never reached the basin. It became a desert so dry and so hostile that even the toughest desert plants struggled to survive. Rainfall here is almost laughably low, less than 100 millimeters a year. To put that in perspective, every square meter receives roughly the same amount of water as a 500 milliliter bottle per week. Imagine trying to grow a tree or even a small shrub with just that much water. Even in dry California, some locations enjoy 10 times that amount annually. The Taklamakan is extreme even for desert standards, with summer temperatures that can soar past 40 degrees Celsius and winter nights that plunge below minus 20 degrees Celsius. There is no vegetation to moderate the heat or cold, so the ground itself burns in summer and freezes in winter. The desert does not just test plants, it tests people. Sandstorms here are legendary. By the 1990s, the skies over Beijing, hundreds of kilometers away, were darkened for more than 80 days each year by dust blowing in from the Taklamakan and Gobi deserts. People had to wear masks just to breathe. Schools and factories closed on particularly bad days, and the sun could disappear behind a cloud of sand for hours. It became a national problem that was visible from space. Satellite images released in the 1980s show dust traveling thousands of kilometers, reaching Korea, Japan, and even the western United States. What began as shifting sand in northwest China was affecting the air and health of people across the world. But that wasn't the only problem. You can't just blame the desert alone. Scientists believe that human activity is to blame in part for spreading the sand. Trees were cut for firewood, grazing animals ate whatever little vegetation could survive, and groundwater was drained faster than it could replenish. The soil lost its ability to hold itself together, and patches of grass that once slowed the wind disappeared. Without this natural protection, sand began marching forward. Some dunes even moved 3 to 10 meters a year, swallowing farms, villages, and roads. The desert was on the move, and towns on the edges had no choice but to abandon their homes. Xinjiang and Inner Mongolia, regions that once supported bustling communities, started seeing ghost villages buried under the golden waves of sand. The problem was so obvious that by the late 1970s, the government could no longer ignore it. According to a national ecological report in 1977, almost a quarter of northern China risked turning into desert if nothing was done. This was not just a local problem. It was a threat to food, water, health, and the economy. Each year, China was losing 3,000 to 4,000 square kilometers of fertile land to advancing dunes, roughly the size of Luxembourg. Maps showed a creeping sea of sand moving steadily toward the more populated northern plains. Communities at the desert edges were struggling to adapt. Some tried building low barriers of stone or planting small shrubs, but the effort could not compete with the power of the wind. Whole towns were in danger, roads vanished overnight under drifting sand, crops failed, and water wells ran dry. The desert was not waiting. It was relentless, swallowing everything in its path. This was the invisible enemy in the sky. Dust and sand were not just a nuisance, they were a weapon of climate and geography. They reduced visibility, damaged machinery, ruined soil far beyond the desert, and carried pathogens that worsened health conditions. Every gust of wind threatened cities hundreds of kilometers away, turning Beijing and its surrounding provinces into a gray, choking space for months each year.
The problem wasn't local. Massive, suffocating sandstorms would blot out the sun in the capital, Beijing, turning day into an apocalyptic twilight.
The Taklamakan gradually became known as a sea of death.
China is home to some of the world's most formidable deserts, the Gobi and the Taklamakan. The Taklamakan is known locally by a much more terrifying name, the Sea of Death.
Explorers and scientists admitted that it was one of the harshest environments on the planet, a place where life was pushed to the limits of endurance. For centuries, it was accepted as a lost land, something humans could observe but not touch, a desert too vast and too unforgiving to change. However, the Chinese government understood that things could not continue as they were. Humans had pushed the environment to the edge, but now it was time for them to push back. In the next stage, we'll expose the incredible plan China developed to turn this lifeless sand into a sea of green. Keep watching, because what you are about to witness is nothing short of amazing. The Green Great Wall of China. This is where the story of the Green Great Wall begins, one of the most daring environmental projects ever attempted. In 1978, China launched what it called the Three North Shelter Belt Program, a plan that would stretch from the northwest to the north and then to the northeast, covering more than 45,000 kilometers of land.
In 1978, China declared war, not on a nation, but on the desert itself. The official name was the Three North Shelter Belt Program. The world would come to know it as the Great Green Wall.
It was not designed to last a few years. It was planned to run from 1978 all the way to the year 2050. The goal was simple on paper, but enormous in scale. China wanted to stop the deserts from swallowing more land and then push the sand back where it came from. At that time, the country had watched dunes grow bigger and move closer to farms and towns every year. Something had to happen if people were going to keep living and working in these regions. The size of the mission showed how serious the government was. The plan targeted an area so wide that it covered almost the entire northern edge of the country. Experts warned that it would take several generations to see results. Still, China believed it had no choice. The alternative was to let the desert keep expanding. The Green Great Wall was the answer, and its scale was massive. One of the most ambitious targets was to plant 35 million hectares of new forests. That number is hard to picture until you compare it to something familiar. 35 million hectares is almost the size of Germany. It meant creating an entirely new forest the size of a major European country, and doing it in places that barely received any rain and had little soil left. The plan covered farmland, grassland, dry plains, and the edges of deserts, like the Taklamakan and Gobi. This was an effort that had to work across different landscapes, each with its own challenges. When the program started, China's forest coverage was around 10%. Years of land misuse and natural conditions had wiped out entire regions of trees. But things slowly changed. Over the decades, the country increased its forest coverage to more than 25%. This was one of the biggest and fastest increases in recorded history. For a country that once lost land every year to sand, this turnaround was remarkable. More than new forests, it proved that humans could actually reverse some of the damage done by nature. But there's more to it. Keep watching. You see, the Green Great Wall was never a single straight forest. Many people thought it was just a line of trees stretching from one end of China to the other. But what grew on the ground was far more complex. Chinese engineers and scientists built a living network. Thousands of forests were planted in patches to suit different regions. Grasslands were revived. Windbreak belts were established to block and slow the movement of sand. In some areas, ecological lakes were created to restore water systems that had dried up. Together, these pieces formed a mosaic of green infrastructure designed to strengthen each part of the land. It was a wall made of life, not bricks. But planning where and how to grow this network was not guesswork. In the early 2000s, engineers began using satellite images and drones to study the deserts. They tracked how dunes moved, how fast the wind shifted sand, and which areas lost the most soil each year. These remote sensing tools helped them understand erosion patterns that were invisible from the ground. The information allowed planners to place forests and windbreaks exactly where they were needed. In an environment where water was limited and survival was uncertain, precision mattered more than anything else. One of the most important inventions in the fight against desert movement was the straw checkerboard system. Let's explain the amazing process and technology behind it. Stay with us. Workers laid bundles of straw on the sand in neat squares measuring about 6 by 6 meters. This created a huge grid that stretched far across the desert floor. These straw squares helped reduce wind speed by up to 60%. As the wind slowed, the dunes became stable, and the sand stopped shifting as quickly. The system created small, protected pockets where plants could survive long enough to grow roots. Without these grids, most seeds would be blown away within hours. Getting the straw into the desert was a challenge of its own. Millions of tons had to be transported from farming regions hundreds of kilometers away. The desert had no paved roads in many places, so trucks had to be modified to drive over soft sand. Even then, vehicles often sank or got stuck. Workers had to dig them out under a sun that offered no mercy. Every load of straw placed in the desert was the result of heavy labor and long travel across some of the harshest terrain in the world. The work on the ground did not stop there. After the straw was placed, teams had to dig trenches and secure the grids while standing in temperatures as high as 49 degrees Celsius. Heat stroke was a real danger. Many workers wrapped wet cloths around their necks to stay conscious. They had to move quickly because resting under the open sky was almost impossible. The conditions were extreme, but the job had to continue because the desert never waited. With the sand finally stabilized in some places, the next question was what to plant. This was where plant science met the reality of the desert. Species like saxaul, red willow, and desert poplar were chosen because they could survive with less than 80 millimeters of rainfall a year. These trees grew slowly, but they were tough. In salt-heavy soil near dried riverbeds, salt-resistant shrubs performed better than anything else. These choices required years of trials, where scientists planted different species and recorded which ones stayed alive after the first brutal summer. However, that wasn't all. The straw checkerboards did more than stop sand. As they sat on the ground, they lowered the surface temperature by as much as 10 degrees Celsius. They held moisture that would otherwise disappear within minutes. Over time, the straw broke down naturally and became part of the soil. This process improved the land just enough for roots to reach deeper and for the plants to stand a chance. What started as simple straw squares slowly created microclimates where plants began establishing themselves. The Green Great Wall grew from these small patches of success. One square after another, one tree after another, one protected pocket at a time. It was steady work that needed patience, science, and persistence. The results did not appear overnight, but they did appear. With every new patch of green came a little more stability. And soon, the project would move even deeper into the desert, where new challenges called for even more creative solutions that combined sunlight, engineering, and new technology. And so, Chinese scientists began to create a new type of technology, integrated deep in the deserts, climate technology. The sheer scale of the projects will leave you speechless. Keep watching. China's Climate Technology Zone. Deserts have a way of making everything look impossible until someone proves otherwise, and that is what has been happening across the Taklamakan. Engineers and scientists looked at a place with almost no rain, shifting dunes, and temperatures that swing wildly, and decided it could become a stage for climate technology. Their first bet was sunlight, because the region gets more than 2,700 hours of sun every single year, which puts it among the brightest places on the planet. That kind of sunlight is not just good for solar panels. It is enough to power entire experiments in energy, farming, and long-term ecosystem engineering. This gave rise to what many call the Turpan and Taklamakan solar strategy. The idea was simple. If the desert is going to punish everything with heat, then it should at least help produce clean electricity. Giant fields of panels now stretch across empty land, soaking up light that once went to waste. These are not scattered installations. They are organized grids that run for kilometers, feeding electricity into isolated towns, research stations, and long roads that would normally be impossible to maintain. One of the most surprising places where this power goes is the Tarim Desert Highway, a road that cuts straight through the southern belly of the Taklamakan. When work began on it in the 1990s, experts thought the sand would swallow the road within a few years.
We are going to be reacting to how China removed billions tons of sand out of desert that amazed the world after 1 year.
2. Keep it alive. China planted long belts of trees along both sides, turning the highway into a narrow green corridor in the middle of endless dunes. Trees in a desert need water, and that triggered the next innovation. Engineers set up 86 pumping stations along the highway, some pulling water from more than 100 meters below ground. These would normally depend on diesel engines, but instead, each station runs on solar power, taking sunlight that is practically free and turning it into a steady water supply. But water alone cannot save young plants in a desert, so the entire tree belt relied on a drip irrigation network buried under the sand. It feeds water directly to the roots of more than 200,000 trees, slowing down moisture loss in land where humidity is almost zero. Believe it or not, the survival rate was 70%, which is rare for any desert project on this scale. Every tree stands like a quiet worker holding back the sand, and together they protect the highway that once seemed impossible to maintain. This blend of green energy and green barriers is the reason the Tarim route is described as the world's first carbon-free desert highway. The process feels simple when you look at it closely. Sunlight becomes electricity. Electricity becomes water. Water becomes trees. Trees hold the dunes back and keep the road open. Everything feeds into the next stage, creating a loop that works without relying on fossil fuels or constant human intervention. Solar fields in the desert region use smart designs that help both the environment and the equipment. Many panels are raised about 2 meters off the ground. The space under them is not wasted. The panels block a large portion of direct heat, cooling the sand beneath them by 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. That small difference matters. It creates pockets where hardy plants such as licorice and hawthorn can grow. These plants stabilize the soil, reduce dust, and even increase the lifespan of the solar panels by cutting down the amount of sand that blows against them. Chinese scientists were not done, so next, they created something that would change everything you thought you knew about China: heliostats. Solar power in the Taklamakan is not limited to panels. Some areas now host heliostat fields containing thousands of mirrors that turn with the sun. Each mirror reflects light toward a central tower filled with molten salt. This salt can reach temperatures above 540 degrees Celsius, storing heat long after the sun goes down. This allows power stations to produce electricity at night, which is something normal solar panels cannot do. A single 50-megawatt solar tower costs roughly 130 million United States dollars, but it pays for itself by delivering steady electricity to communities that would otherwise be cut off or depend on diesel shipments. The success of these systems supports the larger desert reforestation projects. When irrigation pumps depend on sunlight rather than imported fuel, engineers do not have to worry about constant resupply or engine breakdowns. Water flows at all hours, keeping young trees alive through the hottest days and coldest nights. In a place with almost no rainfall, round-the-clock water supply is the only way to prevent plants from dying after just a few weeks. Stable energy keeps that lifeline open. Over time, the Taklamakan has become something like a climate technology laboratory. Researchers come here to study how solar thermal storage works in extreme conditions, how desert plants respond to controlled irrigation, and how engineered forests behave when surrounded by dunes that move every season. The desert gives them harsh conditions that push every system to its limit. This helps them design solutions that can later be used in other dry regions around the world. All these projects feed into a simple loop that some scientists call the sun to water to life cycle. It begins with sunlight, the one resource the desert has in overwhelming supply. That sunlight produces clean energy. The energy powers pumps and irrigation systems. The irrigation brings life back into areas where nothing survived for centuries. Each step strengthens the next, forming a controlled ecosystem that grows stronger every year. The trees reduce sandstorms. The reduced sandstorms protect the solar fields. The solar fields guarantee a steady supply of power. The power keeps the forests alive. It is a circle that turns every day, shaped by human planning, but powered by nature. The Taklamakan still stretches out with its endless dunes and shifting winds, but there is a different story unfolding inside it now. What began as scattered experiments has grown into a large connected system where energy, water, and plant life support one another in a place that once rejected all three. In addition to that, ecotourism began to rise along the edges of the Taklamakan. Travelers from across China, Central Asia, and even Europe now come to see a desert that is slowly turning green at its borders. What was once an empty stretch of land has become a living classroom where visitors can see climate tech and nature growing side by side. The rise in visitors also shows how much the land has changed. China has restored more than 30 million hectares of degraded land across its northern belt, which is the largest ecological recovery effort ever recorded. Back in the 1980s, places like Kakaya battled dust events for almost 100 days every year. That number has dropped to about 30, which is an 82% fall. Cleaner air has improved health, and clearer skies have given locals more stable weather. In China, a forest has risen from the harsh desert storms. This is not just amazing, it is the wonder of Chinese technology. It is breathtaking. Thank you for staying with us. Do you think other countries can copy China's green model? Share your opinions with us in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen and you will enjoy it.